All right, so I downloaded the fonts that I wanted to use, like this one, and I installed them into my font book on my computer, right there. So this one's called Not Mary Kate, not an obvious name, but it's the one I'm going to use. And instead of using those fonts in Photoshop, I want to modify them. And so I'm going to open up a new Illustrator file. So start Adobe Illustrator, AI. You've already saved this, so you could go ahead and close Photoshop so it doesn't take up a lot of memory, because we're not going to be using Photoshop for a little bit. While I'm waiting for Illustrator to open up, which can be slow, I'm going to go ahead and organize my assignment files. So put my Zelda airline reference in there. And maybe open up my reference images. This one is the one I'm mainly using as inspiration. So I'll just open that up in preview and just have that open as a guide. And shrink it into a corner. That will inspire me. All right, let's see if Illustrator is open. Almost. All right, so Illustrator. All right, now that Illustrator is open, I haven't opened anything with Illustrator. I'm going to create a new file. So I say File, New. And so that I'm allowed to do all color options, I'm going to keep it as a print profile, and I'm going to call this Carl Assignment 8 Font Options. It'll open up a new artboard for me. I have new layers, right? So on my first layer, I'm going to use the text tool. This is the first time we've used the text tool in this class. And I'm just going to click with the text tool, the T, on my artboard. And then I'm going to remind myself of the font, so Not Mary Kate. And I'm going to go to where it gives you the character rundown, and I'm going to find Not Mary Kate. And I'm going to go ahead and make it huge, so 72 point. It's how fonts are measured as vectors. And I'm going to type in all capitals Zelda. Now, embedded in that font is the spacing between the letters. Right? So what I'm going to do is add my own space in between each letter. And then I can play with the size. So maybe I'll make that space really tiny, like only 6 points in between each letter. This will allow me to play with the spacing between the letters in a very direct way. Other options I have are, now that it is text, I can use the large selection tool and I can stretch it. So I want my Zelda to be a little bit taller. Right? This is still as text. The advantage of having it as text is I can fix spelling mistakes and use any of the characters. So for instance, as text with the type tool, I can click on this and change this to a lowercase a, which in this font is the same as an uppercase a, so it doesn't matter. Okay, and I have that type or that font in between. I can make the space in between smaller. I could even make it like 1 point if I wanted to. But maybe I want the Z to be bigger. So let's try this at 160. No, that's too big. Let's try 130. Yeah, that's looking a little better, right? And then if I go to my inspirations, I can see that the Z is not only bigger, but it's dropped down a little bit. So how would I do that? Well, I would take this Z and I would say Command X to copy it and get rid of it. Use the text tool again. Maybe even on a new layer. And paste it in. And then move it where I want it. Same thing with the A. I want the A closer. So I'm going to unlock that text tool on the first line. Use my type tool. Get rid of this space in between. So they're almost touching. And then maybe just say, okay, no, I don't want 6 point, but maybe I want like 2 point there. Just a little bit of space. I don't want 102 point. Let's try 3 point. No, that's too much. So yeah, maybe just 1 point. And that's a lot different than having, whoops, nothing at all. And if I don't feel like the difference between none and 1 is enough, then I'm going to select the A, Command X, put it on a new layer, lock the other layers, Command V, paste it in, and then move it into place exactly where I want it. And maybe I want this A to be a little bit bigger too. Use the type tool. I made the Z 130, I'll make this 120. But then I'll use the large selection tool and also make it a little bit more narrow, just so it feels a little more balanced. Now when you're dealing with type, you often deal with like where things line up. And so one way to do that is to turn on your rulers by doing Command R. And we don't usually need rulers much in Illustrator, but they can be helpful for this reason. Just like in Photoshop, we can drag down guides from the rulers. And I want to see what the bottom of the Z is and what the top of the Z, the top of the A is. I like how that lines up, but the Z just hooks over. And I like how that pretty much lines up to an equal bottom. So I think that's pretty nicely balanced. Okay, we can try another thing here, but this is limited to what's embedded in the type. So if I select the L here, I can see if I can italicize it, or I can hit Command I, and I do not have an italics option for it. So how am I going to be able to get that? Well, the only way you can change what's in the font is to then right-click on it and you don't want to be on the type tool for this, so just you're going to right-click on it with the large selection tool, and then you say Create Outlines. And what that does, only once you're sure you have all the spelling and spacing issues to your satisfaction, then it turns each font into a vector with its own anchor points. Now that that's done, I can use my small selection tool, select the L, right, just like that, and I can move, with the small selection tool, individual anchor points over a little bit. And I can try to do it one by one, or I can just select them all like this. And I can use some of these transform tools. So let's see. It's not as easy as doing free transforming and warping and things in Photoshop, but a lot of things are possible. So I'm going to do shear, and shear should allow me to make it look like it's italicized slightly. Not that much though. So object transform, shear, try 88. Let's see what that does. Nope. Okay, not that. You can tell I don't use these often. Shear. Let's try the vertical axis. Because it's 77. Didn't do much. Oh, I understand what I'm doing. All right, so 75. Keep it on angle. Maybe. Nope. All right. Don't want that. Object, transform, shear. Try it very subtle. Okay, so I just need to go a little bit off. So if you want to imitate, oops. Object, transform, shear, a standard italicized, you just move the shear angle on the horizontal axis just up a little bit from 360. And then you'll get an italicized version. I don't think I even want to italicize that much. But I don't like how it's purely horizontal and vertical. So why don't I take that whole layer, all of those, and then transform and shear it just so slightly, maybe like 350. Or 5. And I can type it in too. There we go. So just really slight. And then I can use the large move tool, just like any vector, and kind of move it into place. Okay, so that's my customization of it without doing anything that had to be hand drawn. So let me remind you, this is what this looked like on its own without me doing anything. Just the font. So this is quite a different solution from that same font. Now what if I didn't like the really strong spikes on the A's? I don't like how that looks kind of demonic there. I want it to look family friendlier for my airline. So instead, what do? Well, I go to the large selection tool, I select that layer, and I right click and I say create outlines to turn it into a vector. And then just like any vector, I can redraw it. If I want the A to end right there, I can redraw it. If I want this to be less of a strong curve, I can redraw it. Now how can I make that match exactly on this side? Well, this is how. I'm going to redraw this end just to be kind of cut off like that. I'll draw through a little bit more so you can see. Like that. Oh, I don't want to lose that sharpness though. So let me redraw it from this point down through there. Okay, and now what I'll do is I'll use my lasso tool and select a little cutout right here. And then I will, actually I can just select the whole A. It's all on that one layer. Then I will copy it, put a new layer above it, say edit, paste in place, and then I'll say object, transform, reflect on the vertical, just like flipping it horizontally, and then move it into place. Line it up with the other layer, like so. And then use the eraser, make it a little bit bigger. To clean up, whoops, wrong layer. To clean up those edges. So that's what I want on both sides. So as a vector, you can use all those vector tools to clean it up.